And that happens too. $660 just to close a few minor cracks in the drywall and paint one wall. Those are the rates prevailing in Los Angeles. And these are sums exclusively for labor, excluding the cost of the materials themselves. Recently, a subscriber of mine sent me photos of a garage wall and directly asked how much it might cost to make such a wall independently. Completely hide the defects, qualitatively paint the surface white, and whether he would even be able to cope with this task without outside help. I answered briefly, no problem. All it takes is the desire and a couple of $100 in your pocket. But, as it turned out later, everything was not so simple. And he made one fatal mistake during the repair, which instantly crossed out all the quality. Let us start this story from the very beginning, so that you can see with your own eyes how the events unfolded. You will be greatly surprised by how many pitfalls hide in such a simple local repair, how much the customer ultimately saved by deciding on a DIY repair instead of paying crazy money to contractors. By the way, along the way, I will certainly tell you how much I was tipped for the initial consultation on this object. I received a photo of a standard garage from the subscriber, on the back wall of which terrible cracks were clearly protruding. And we faced the task not just to smear them, but to make the surface ideal. To begin with, let us completely clear this space of all the clutter that has accumulated for years and prevents us from approaching the walls. Here on the floor, a red toolbox, heavy shovels, old car tires, canisters, and cubes of wood await us, and to the left hangs a shelf packed to capacity with boxes and cans. After the general cleaning, the room radically changes its appearance, finally opening up full access to our work area. Zooming in on the taken photo, we clearly see all the treacherous joints with cracks that completely ruin the geometry of the wall. When we generally talk about garage repairs, we usually imagine a large-scale reconstruction of the house, but the harsh reality is that everything always boils down to local problems with walls and ceilings. This hits especially painfully when changing climatic conditions begin to ruthlessly destroy building materials, leaving micro defects at every step. By the way, the capricious climate in Los Angeles has its specific traps, because the excessive dryness of the air instantly draws out moisture and accelerates the formation of such treacherous cracks at the drywall joints. The main reasons for the appearance of these cursed cracks at the drywall joints in garages or residential buildings lie in several critical factors that few people think about. The first death trap is the constant mobility of the frame or the entire house, because seasonal temperature and humidity drops in a closed garage cause micro deformations of wood or metal, transmitting destructive energy directly to the seams. The second common cause is the complete absence of technological expansion joints, because rigid fastening of sheets end to end creates colossal internal tension in the wall. The third hidden threat is the low quality of materials or gross violations during putty mixing, because of which the mixture gives wild shrinkage and cracks even before the completion of work. And now, let us clearly dive into the process and execute the entire order of work, according to the strict ASTM industrial standard, so that the result lasts for decades. About how much a garage repair with a minimum budget costs, I will tell you in detail a bit later, and for now we move on to practice. Our first step requires surgical precision. We widen existing cracks and joints in a V shape to a depth of 1/12 of an inch using the sharp edge of a putty knife or a special hand scraper. This is done so that the future putty, along with the reinforcing tape, merges into the base rather than just holding on a wing in a prayer. After this stage, we thoroughly sweep out all crumbs, old pieces, and construction dust with an ordinary paintbrush or a powerful construction vacuum cleaner. Construction work in a region like Los Angeles requires increased attention, as dust settles on the surface with incredible speed due to dry winds. Even the smallest layer of dust is capable of completely destroying the adhesion of the material, so no allowances can be made here. And only when every millimeter of our V-shaped grooves shines with cleanliness do we get the green light to move on to the next stage. The next step of the technological process resembles a ritual. We apply professional deep penetration primer to each prepared section of the wall or ceiling. This procedure is vital to stop the wild absorbing capacity of the paper on the drywall. Otherwise, it will instantly drink all the moisture from your precious putty. If you spit on this stage and skip the primer, the mixture will dry out in a matter of minutes and begin to crumble even before it starts working. The technical regulations clearly state the drying time of a high-quality primer is from 1 to 2 hours, ignoring which is strictly prohibited. Even such a basic routine process requires iron patience, because haste in this matter is a direct step to redoing the entire wall. Neat brush drawing guarantees that the next layer will lie monolithically and last without any complaints for years. As soon as the primer is completely dry, turning into a strong protective film, we take the proven, ready-to-use USG sheetrock lightweight putty and a narrow putty knife in our hands. We need to aggressively press this mixture into the prepared V-shaped grooves using the rib and plane of the tool so as not to leave a single air pocket inside. Immediately after this, we press the reinforcing tape into the fresh layer of putty, expelling every excess air bubble to the surface. This is the heart of our structure, because high-quality reinforcement is the only shield against future cracks. Immediately after, we thoroughly pressed in the reinforcing tape and drove out all air bubbles. I stopped for a second and remembered a moment that sincerely made me smile. By the way, for this detailed step-by-step instruction and telephone consultation, the subscriber back then threw me $30 on top purely as a tip. Now look at the result and think for yourself. Is such work and spent time worth this money? Be sure to write your thoughts in the comments below this video. Immediately after reinforcement, without waiting for the base to dry, we arm ourselves with a wide 12-inch drywall knife to achieve ideal geometry. We remove all excess material at a sharp angle, making a smooth movement from the center to the edges to erase any transitions between the putty and the factory drywall. The unique plasticity of the USG mixture works wonders, leaving the edges so thin that subsequent work turns into a pleasure. Thanks to this, we completely save both materials and, most importantly, time on tedious sanding. When the material finally dried and brightened, we take sandpaper with a grit of 240 in our hands and bring the surface to an absolute ideal with light circular movements. At this stage, the local repair of walls and ceilings approaches the finale, paving the way for final painting. Next comes the turn of solid priming of the entire wall area with mandatory waiting of at least 4 hours until complete drying. And right here, the main drama of our plot happens. It is here that my subscriber made a fatal mistake that cost him his nerves. He wanted so much to finish everything in one day that he dared to start painting just an hour after priming. To his misfortune, it was raining outside that day, humidity was off the charts, and the drying time of the compounds increased manifold. The very first coat of expensive paint instantly went into terrible spots on the raw drywall, turning all previous work into chaos. The entire procedure had to be canceled and postponed to the next day, proving to the subscriber that the law of drying is a law of physics, not a piece of advice. The total net working time was 8 to 10 hours, but due to technological pauses, the process stretched over 3 days. All operations were performed in accordance with strict American building codes ASTM C475 and ASTM C840. And now, let us reveal the main intrigue. How much does such a garage repair really cost with your own hands if you discard the greed of contractors? For this work, you do not need cosmic tools. Everything necessary will lie on the shelf of the nearest hardware supermarket. The main hero of our estimate is a gallon of ready-made USG sheetrock lightweight finishing putty. This lightweight compound with zero shrinkage is ideal for such tasks. For our 16 by 10 foot wall, you will need a roll of high-quality paper or mesh tape, as well as a quart of primer. Add basic 4-inch and 12-inch putty knives here, as well as a few sheets of 240 grit sandpaper. The right approach turns exhausting routine into a simple and controlled process. For a wall with an area of 160 square feet, we have 5 to 6 vertical seams 10 feet long and horizontal joints. Taking into account real market prices for Los Angeles, a container of putty will cost $15 to $20, tape will cost $5 to $8, and a quart of primer will cost $5 to $7. Putty knives will cost only $4 to $6, and sandpaper will run up to $3. In total, the net budget for materials and tools ranges from $31 to $44. Based on open data from markets like the Home Depot, taking into account the subsequent purchase of high-quality paint, the full expanded set will cost about $143. This proves that competent garage reconstruction with one's own hands is available to anyone who is not afraid to follow the technology. $143 is cheaper than $660. Subscribe to the channel to be the first to see truthful instructions on how to do high-quality DIY repairs without overpayments.